I'm sure you've noticed the trend lately, as I have, of RPGs coming out that are deemed sort of solo friendly as opposed to strictly solo or strictly to be played with some type of GM and players differentiated. Some of them are called GM-less, some of them, like this one, are brand themselves as a solo friendly tabletop role-playing game. In this case, it is of demon hunting and community building, and players take on the role of a group of dwarves who must assume control of a demon-haunted mine along with its accompanying settlement. It's a settlement that they inherited after the death of their distant relative. So you're coming into a story here, and it says the game focuses on the dwarves' journey as they navigate the challenges of their new responsibilities, rebuild a new thriving community, and clear the mine of its fire-spitting monsters. We have a link here that I'll put down below, and the credits here that we will look at on the title page. This game was sent to me by the publishers of the game, and it is an interesting example of games that are kind of seek to bridge, I wouldn't say a gap, because I do think there are two distinct things between what I just kind of refer to as a traditional RPG, meaning a game played around a table with two or more players, one of whom is the leader, the GM, the DM, whatever the game refers to it as, the referee, and solo, where you are playing alone and assuming both of those roles in one way or another. And of course, there are solo journaling games, etc., that are kind of outside of that rubric of assuming both in a way. But this game offers, I think, a great setting and a very nimble rule set for playing solo. I found, as we'll get into it and we'll see, that it could have used a bit more in terms of the random tables that it provides. I think to play this solo effectively, you're going to need to go outside of what is offered here, or just kind of move into more of a journaling mode rather than rolling on a lot of prompts or tables to give the direction to the story. But the mechanics of it are very elegant, and I think really work to allow you as a soloist to go with more than just one character, because you are in the fiction of this world, you're playing a group of dwarves, and so you want to be able to, I think, run more than one character to experience that fully. And it is easy to do that with the rules of this game. So you do get a little of the introduction here that your Brokar Longneck of House Grandrock has passed away, and you are his only surviving relative or relatives. In his will, he has bequeathed to you the cursed mines of the Long Belt, its dilapidated settlement, and the leadership of the House Grandrock. However, other dwarf houses seek to overthrow you and take control of the valuable minerals hidden deep within those cold tunnels. To complicate matters further, most of the mine's galleries are haunted by fire-spitting demons from the underworld. And as I mentioned, you take on it's described as a sci-fi solo-friendly tabletop role-playing game. It's kind of mixing sci-fi and fantasy here. And it explains you getting a description of what the world is, and that there are these dwarven houses. There are also Elvic clans that are at the center of all of this. And it says each district, city, planet, system, and space station has its own laws and customs. This makes every destination unique and exciting. There is magic. It's mystical, powerful, consequential, and most importantly, unpredictable. So you are meant to begin by you narrate your character's actions, you engage with the world with your ideas, you accept challenges, you collaborate and discuss things, you listen, pay attention, and move the spotlight onto other players and basically enjoy and create something fun. You have, starting with some name generations here for your dwarven house, an elf clan, and some human corporations. And then there is the character creation determination. And I will say that the characters and their kits, I think they're called, take up a good amount of space in the overall rule book, including some very nice, there's a lot of 2-page spreads of art here. I think they could have maybe saved some space by making these one pages, because most of the second page is not much of anything, but it is, it's, I guess, designed to be very dramatic in that way. And indeed it is. You get a real sense of the different types of characters. And to create a character, you will be choosing a kit, which is like the character type. You will be making your names and then filling in the details. And it's very easy to do that. So these are the tables that work for all of the characters. And then you can give yourself some personality traits that are not necessarily mechanic based, but it says here that these will help bring your characters to life and make them more dynamic and engaging, including how they look and some quirks that they might have. But really it is the kits themselves. They're each on a double page spread that explain to you how the character works. So in this game, there are 3 skills: strength, dexterity, and willpower, and they work with different dice. And that is the mechanic of this game, that you are having the way that the stats are differentiated is the dice that you're rolling to use that stat. So in this character, the stanchion, you are a powerful and astute guardian. You view the world as a treasure. Its people, stories, and legacy must be protected. You cherish the riches of the world and are unwavering in your duty to guard and preserve them. So as such, you have a strength that was a D8, dexterity of a D4, and willpower of a D6. You get to choose, you begin with an item here. So in this case, you have a coal wash rune, which is your shotgun with explosive bullets, and that's a D6, and these are consumables that you have. And it will give you the details of kind of how you play that character. So in this case, you always rely on your shotgun, your shield, your power armor, your jetpack, and your determination. And then you get to choose an ability, and you could choose any one ability to start. They recommend that you might start with the first one if you're unsure, but it will give you different little variances on how you are interacting with the world and what it costs to do so and what the outcomes of your interaction are. You could be something called a sounder. And so we could see here, this is a perceptive and perseverant hunter. Things get lost, stolen, people disappear or flee. The sounders are those in the society who walk in the darkness, uncovering the unseen and shining their light in search of the lost. So here you could see your dexterity is the D8, your strength is D4, and your willpower is D6. And the background choices here are, you could have been a bounty hunter, and you will be given a series of questions. I didn't point this out, but it's true for all of the kits. A series of questions to answer narratively to flesh out who your character was. So were they a bounty hunter, a bodyguard, or an investigator? And these backgrounds really do give the insight into how the character is meant to be played. You could be a striker, and the striker is basically a war fighter. Their backgrounds suggested mercenary, a candidate. You're hoping that defeating the mind's demons will elevate you, or an exile. Maybe you have a criminal past. And here your strength is a D8, dexterity a D6, and willpower a D4. So I'm not going to go through all of them. We'll just look at one more. This is the rune caster. So there's magic in the world, and you're a rune caster here, where your willpower is the D8. And it says that every dwarf is a craftsperson. For the spellwinder, this veers into the supernatural. At their call, the rocks themselves answer to their true names. So when you play this, you know truths, seek answers, and channel powerful magic. And there are other things too. There's a mechanic here called the sinker. There's the student here, an adaptable and determined student. And there is something described as a steadfast and sturdy foundation. So when you play this, you counsel, heal, and lead. You're a mender, a beacon, or a speaker would be the backgrounds. There's a raven who's basically like the thief type of character. And then we get to the rules of the book. After the characters are created, you find out, well, how do you use these skills? And so you will use them to be performing risky acts in the fiction. And it will say here that the effectiveness of the skill is determined by your die rating. The dice go from D4 to D12, and we'll talk about what the D12 is, a special dice here. So you roll the die here, and then you check to see if you are going to be succeeding. So a 5+ on your dice is going to be a great success. 3 to 4, you will succeed with a complication, or 1 to 2, you're going to fail or succeed with a major complication. So as you can see, for example, if your dice is a D4, you're always going to, depending on what you're trying to do as the character, you may not be able to greatly succeed. So it reflects the fact that not everybody can do everything greatly. And also, obviously, if you are rolling with even a D6 on something, the chances of a great success, meaning a 5 or plus, is going to be less. So it is using the die chain to create the differentiation among the types of characters and how they work in the world. And then after a check, everyone who participated has to step down the rating of what they use by 1. So you can't keep going through and just, for example, if you are having a D8 on your strength, just kind of keep bashing through with your D8, constantly rolling 5 or more. You are going to be stepping down that die, and it's going to represent like a less effective use of it as you get tired, as you do something repetitively, for example. So that's a nice check for the checks that ensures that you're not just continuing to roll something and there's no real change in the outcome. And there are positions that this is basically like advantage and disadvantage. So if you're doing something and you're in a good position, or they call it excellent, or if you're in an excellent position, the fiction is on your side. Perform a check by rolling twice and taking the highest result. So, you're in a safe setting and you're trying to unlock something that's locked up and there's no one around, and you have a knack for doing this, you're going to be in an excellent position. A good is you're in control of the situation, so you can roll a check by taking a die one step above what you would normally roll. So it's a benefit, maybe not as good as a benefit of re-rolling, but you get an enhanced dice or die for that roll. Fair is just the check as normal. So you're just kind of playing through, check as normal. And a bad is you basically roll twice and take the lowest result. And if it's a really bad, you can't go at all with your action. So you may wonder, well, how do you get these dice back? Because you're stepping down every time you use them. So there's something here called catching your breath, and it says it allows you to reset all your skills to their initial ratings. It acts as a brief break in the tension, and it can be done at any time, even during combat. Now, I will say this rule, being so crucial to how the mechanics work, for soloists is a little tough, because you could just always say to yourself, well, let me just take a break and get back my original die. So that is something I think as a soloist you have to sort of mitigate how you're going to use it. Now, when you catch your breath, you are supposed to introduce a new complication to the scene. So you're not just saying like, okay, I'm going to take a breather now. You're going to be expected to introduce a complication to that scene. So again, this piece of it on solo play, I think, might be a little hard to manage. You could create perhaps just some type of chart for yourself, or some type of way of keeping track of, at every X number of usages, you have to use something X number of times before you catch your breath. There would be different ways to handle that. I mentioned the D12 before, but I didn't really explain its significance. So you have a D12 at your disposal, and it represents your grit. And it's going to basically allow you to perform a feat of pure determination and just rolling that for anything you're doing. And you obviously then have the best chance of getting a 5+ if you're rolling a d12. You can use it once, and then you're going to need to rest before you use it again. But there's no restrictions on when or how you can use it. So you do have abilities. These are special talents, and they have a cost in die steps, which ranges from 0 to 3. So when you use an ability, you have to step down one or as many skills equal to the cost. And we saw these abilities here, for example. So this is the student here. So for their confidence ability, when you roll a failure, they can re-roll again before you reduce your skill to attempt a success. So you take the complication, but it doesn't cost any step because that is what your basic ability is. Or it says here, if someone else's check causes a complication, you get to still roll from an excellent position, which we just talked about, when attempting to fix it. But then that's going to cost 1 step. So these are ways of not so much mitigating the roll, but mitigating the implications of a roll based on your particular abilities. And then there are items, and we can see the items here that you're given at your character creation. So, for example, this is a mending rune that this character has, and it's a medical kit containing enhanced supplies and tools, and it's a D6 die. So it says these are items that are important enough to be assigned a die rating. You can carry up to 6 of them. They give you narrative liberties and can be used in place of a skill when making a check or an attack, but their die rating does decrease after each use. So you could decide that rather than, for example, if you're trying to heal someone, not using your dexterity, which is D4, but instead say you're going to use your mending kit here, which is a D6. So obviously a slightly improved chance of success. There's a great mechanic here to do something over time, and it's called projects. And it says projects let you undertake long-term endeavors, including crafting lasting items. When you start a new project, you make note of it and assign it a D4 project die. As you work on it in the fiction, you increase the die when you make progress. And again, there's a lot of narrative leeway given here. And then when you feel ready, you're going to roll whatever project die you have left, and this chart will explain the outcome. So, for example, a 1 to 2, you did it, but something went wrong. 3 to 4, you did it. When crafting an item, its rating matches the die you rolled. And 5 or plus, you outdid yourself. When crafting an item, its initial rating is 1 step higher than the die you rolled for your project. And this is honestly a great mechanic that you could just use in any solo RPG that you're playing to track just a long-term effort without a ton of mechanics here. Now, sometimes you may be in a situation where you can't resolve it with a single check, and these are challenges, and they can also be used to handle combat when playing solo. You set a number of successes that you need over multiple checks in order to be successful. So, for example, if you're trying to do something precarious, you need 3 successes. If it's risky, you need 5. Dangerous is 8, and hopeless is 13. And it gives some examples here of what that actually means. So it's narrating something over a series of checks and having a preset number of successes that you need. And combat is, again, very narratively based and can work as a challenge in that regard. To attack an enemy, you are going to choose the skill or an item. You're going to interpret the result, and here, based on that result, it will tell you how many hits you actually do. So you're not having an item that is going to do X amount of damage. It's going to be based on the success of the roll that you have. So in terms of like having a campaign or an overarching story, there's this concept of visions of glory that gives you control over the narrative and allow you to grow stronger. And before the session starts, you want to sort of say what you expect or what you hope for your character to have happen. And when it comes to fruition, you gain an advancement. And the advancements allow you to grow stronger, but it says that you can also trigger new narrative threads. So when you get an advancement, you roll on the table, you note the result, and then you sort of perform the impact of it. This is basically how you level up, but it's very much tied to narrative and the story. And it says that each advancement can only be acquired once. So you have to make note of what you do here, and there's 20 different options. So you can be gaining things, but you could also have narrative impacts, like the settlement is being in danger from an internal force or an external force, for example. And then we see some oracles that will be familiar to soloists that you can use to support for getting question oracles and answering questions here. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over that because it's probably familiar to many of you, but I will say that they are keyed to this use of various dice. So if you are doing the risk oracle here and it's sort of like a predictable situation, you get to roll a d10 and then interpret that result. But if it's chaotic, you get to only roll a d4 and interpret that result. So again, these can be used very effectively outside of the system, and obviously they are designed to work within this system. We have some charts for making NPCs and rolling basically a fistful of different dice, which I always love that mechanic. You grab your all your D4 up to your D20, roll it all once, and then you get an NPC fleshed out there. And there's some rules advice here that's kind of like geared toward the GM, but would be useful obviously for soloists in terms of how you decide what a skill to use, how you design a settlement, and when to do checks, and how to basically manage the story and manage the advancement. And then, like, love this illustration, like the characters are playing the story here and creating. This is what you do when you're going to create a world here. You roll a bunch of dice and you will create sectors to explore, and you will get physical locations and various details of where to go. And then you have in the book the random tables for the sectors. Now, I think this is where I was left a little wanting, because this is the section on the random tables for the individual sectors. They have points of interest and things, and event tables, D20 event tables. It is not quite as lengthy as I would have hoped. And I think for the soloist, it's where it provides I would think of it, and I'm not going to show you them too much in detail because they should be surprises to you when you play the game. But I think that if you think of them as narrative prompts, as opposed to turning to zillions of tables with D100 tables and things of that nature that are going to actually tell you what you find and create that for you, you'll be better served, because they are the events in particular. You're going to need to bring in a lot of your own imagination, journaling, or other supporting materials if you want to be rolling on tables, because you have what you have here, but you don't have more than that. And this is just a little page of, there's a dice game that's kind of thrown in here that's not applicable to soloists. And then you have some more tables here, but it starts with some guidelines. This kind of repeats some of the information that you've already been given. You have some world sparks here, so theme for your world. You have events. This is a way of a nice way of generating events. Again, this could be useful outside of this. There is material in here that's useful outside of this world. So you can roll a d66 to get an event, and it will tell you they did something, they are something, they will be something, and it is a real spark table. So the event could be, well, they adapted. That would happen. Whatever that was would have to be linked into the story that you were creating, or they are doing something right now, they are observing, or they will be doing something, they will be creating. So I really do love this, because I think it is the kind of table that works very well when you're already into a story. And I think that is a great table. And we have a few little drawings here of some enemies, demons here, and so we get some tables to create the demons, what they look like, what the flavor of them are, what they, if they have a special ability, because that's what's in the world is demons. So this is how you would create those enemies, and different types of threats from the universe. There is a D12 table here of artifacts that you can find. So it says when you loot an item or create one with a project, you can roll on this table to see what you're creating. So you could decide to be having an abstract project to make something and then find out what you have made. Again, very elegant and short, but rich because it allows you to focus on your story as opposed to having to focus on a ton of mechanics. And we have another, I think this is a repetition of the question oracle here, the risk oracle. I did notice that, and the advancement table here is reprinted again. This is the character sheet. And then in my book here, we have the rules reference here, and it appears to be, these appear to be like printed multiple times. I'm pretty sure that they are, I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I noticed that these things are reprinted a bunch of different times. So the question oracle is here. This page seems to be the same as, or at least part of it is this page. I wasn't really sure if they were just trying to fill up pages in the book or what, but in any case, that is the end of the book with the rules reference. Says GM, but it really is useful for soloists. And here it is kind of repeated again. So that's a look inside Stoneburner. I think it offers a lot of great stuff and very easy mechanics. That I like the sort of, I think of it as like a consumable die mechanic where you are, as you do something, you are losing something, the efficiency of it, and it makes for the soloist a built-in way of not getting into too much of a repetitive loop where you're just like, okay, I'm trying to open this thing and I'm keep throwing my D8. Well, as you do that in this game, it's going to get less and less efficient. For example, it's a very simple example. I love that about it. And I love the project mechanic, letting you do something over time. There are the prompt tables are really good in terms of giving you something that a world spark, like creating a world that is, the theme is friends, for example, and you're going to put this together with friends and justice as a theme, for example. That is for a game where you're creating a whole world within the rubric of you are trying to, what the story is saying here is you are trying to protect your mind. I think that's a great marriage of something very general and something very specific that makes it very approachable, I think, for solo play.